The NBA is back after the All-Star break, but man, college basketball has been here with even further proof this weekend. Friday night, Saturday, and even Sunday. Marquee matchups with huge importance and significance night in, night out, day in, day out around the country in college basketball. In DRS, it starts on this Friday, a top 15 tilt in Ann Arbor between two very bitter rivals, two very familiar foes, and two teams right now hoping to earn that Big Ten regular season crown. It is Michigan and Michigan State tonight inside the Chrysler Center in Ann Arbor. As good as you could hope for a Friday night basketball game in college hoops. The Maize and Blue, a 2.5-point home favorite inside the Chrysler Center. Total stands at 150.5. Michigan DRS has had the full week off since being victorious over the weekend. They are 12-2 straight up in Big Ten play. Michigan State, a huge home victory over Purdue earlier this week, covering as a 3.5-point favorite, as you predicted. The Spartans, 12-3 in Big Ten action, which means the winner of tonight's rivalry battle in Ann Arbor occupies the top spot in the Big Ten standings. What are you expecting tonight inside the Chrysler Center?
If you just look at the paperwork of this game per se, right, the better team is Michigan State, third overall in the conference in efficiency on offense, number one overall in defensive efficiency. You take a look at Michigan, 7-7 on both sides here. There's 18 teams, keep in mind, here in the Big Ten, but I do think Michigan has a chance to win this game. So, well done. They're favored to win. Hear me out on this, as I just explained. Yeah. Look, it's hard to win on the road. We get that. Two quality teams matching up, and on paper, Michigan State's better. But if you want to take advantage, Michigan going to give us the number one defense here, here's how we're going to do it. If you look at the turnover percentage, there's no team in conference play worse than the Michigan Wolverines been at turning the basketball over. Good for them, if you will. Michigan State's defense doesn't force a lot of turnovers. Like, if you're telling me I have a team that turns the ball over constantly against a team that will turn you over constantly, you can't even handicap that game or even look in that direction. I don't care what the other statistics even say. But let's get past that here. Michigan's offense here, getting to the free throw line, Ben. Number 2 in conference play at doing that. Michigan State, 12 out of 18 teams at fouling. That gives you free chances going up against a really good defense where you steal points where the clock is stopped and free throw type of events here. Let's look at the three-point shooting, because this is where sometimes you have to get inside the numbers and really determine what can happen. Michigan State's defense, we told you, number 1 in conference play. They're also number 1 at defending the three-point line at 28.1% as a team on defense. That's phenomenal. But understand this, too. There's 18 teams in conference play, 15th at chasing you off the line, which isn't very good, which means the three-point shots will be available. Why is that important? Third overall in conference play, taking three-point shots, it's the Michigan Wolverines. I think there's a chance for Michigan, and when you're at home, you tend to shoot better. The three-point line will be open. If they knock down their three-point shots, they're going to win this basketball game. So even though, as I told you, on paper, technically, Michigan State is better, it's a home game for Michigan. They are rested, and they can take advantage of the number 1 defense in conference play on the three-point line. I think they can get the job done tonight.
Michigan State 12-3 in Big Ten play, 10-4-1 against the spread. They have been booked as an underdog 3 times in conference. They have won 2 games outright, and they lost to UCLA on the road in Pauley, but did cover that game as a 2-point dog, losing by 2. So 2-0-1 against the number all 3 games. In conference action as an underdog, the Spartans have kept the total under because of a great defense. Michigan DRS, top team in the Big Ten, 12-2 straight up. Huge victory on Sunday afternoon in Columbus, booked as an ever-so-slight underdog against Ohio State. That game to the over. But in the last 7 games for the Maize and Blue as a favorite in Big Ten battles, they have not covered the spread once. Very short number tonight, right? Is 2.5 going to factor? I think it's going to be a very, very close game, which is what Michigan is very comfortable in. Sometimes, though, that can come up to catch you at certain stages against the best of the best. The Wolverines have won 6 consecutive games entering tonight to take that top spot in the Big Ten. In all 6 of those games, Donnie, Michigan has won by 4 points or fewer. In all 6. So if it is close, you give the pedigree to the Wolverines, but sometimes you keep an opponent around, they can prevail. I think it is a huge game tonight. One that both teams want desperately. Michigan and Ohio State have the football rivalry, right? But the in-state vitriol between these two teams that continues over to basketball and basically every other sport, there's a lot of hate between these two sides and schools tonight, DRS.
Absolutely, there is. You take a look at big brother versus little brother. You're the state school where the team, the high-priced Michigan, hey, Michigan men, we get all that, and that breeds into it. We'll see what steps up here, but as you take a look at down the stretch as well, these two teams are going to factor in not only down the stretch in the regular season, but also into the conference tournament play and maybe a deep run for one of these two teams. Keep in mind, playing your best basketball at the end of the season, sometimes that's all it takes here. Get hot at the right time and ride that out. You want to talk about Michigan building momentum? Starts once again tonight with beating Michigan State.
And you see those odds right there. The Wolverines, an ever so slight minus money favorite to win the Big Ten at minus 105. They have a half game advantage. A victory tonight would give them a full game and a half over the Spartans. Michigan State, this is their fifth to last Big Ten game. Michigan, still 6 more to go. These two teams will end the year against one another in East Lansing. So a lot to be told still in the story of the Big Ten regular season title race to end out the last few weeks of this regular season. Michigan better prices to win a national championship. Of course, as you see, the Spartans, DRS, still the last team from the Big Ten as a Big Ten school at the time to win a national championship way back in the year 2000 when Tom Izzo was the head coach in East Lansing and Dusty May was a student manager under Bob Knight at Indiana. Not just in the Big Ten, but a big battle in the Big East. Marquette on the road tonight, taking on Villanova. Also a very short spread in favor of the road team. That would be the Golden Eagles. Now just a point and a half, minus 122 on the money line. Total stands at 142 and a half. Villanova had a chance to knock off UConn earlier this week. Squandered a 14-point second half lead about midway through that second half. Marquette's trying to stay in any bit of that Big East title race that St. John's is really in command of at this moment. What do you like tonight between the Cats and the Golden Eagles?
Yeah, let's have some fun with this one, too. Typically, Villanova plays their home games out on the pavilion on the main line. This one will be at the Wells Fargo Center, which is the de facto home away from home, just a few miles away from their campus. But I do think the three-point shot is the key tonight, Ben, because you line this up. We know Marquette likes to shoot the three-point shot. Number 3 in conference play. Doing that volume-wise, number 6 in conference play is Villanova. But here's where the battle's going to be won. Villanova is the best three-point shooting in conference play percentage-wise. 39% of their shots as a team go down. But how about Marquette's defense? Number 1 overall at defending the three-point line. But they will let you shoot the three-point shot. And also Villanova's defense, 11th out of 11 teams, Ben, at letting you shoot the three-point shot. I'm going to ride this one out. I'm going to say we're going to be efficient in this game, make the three-point shots in a close ball game, climb those fouls in the final 2 minutes if you need them. How about over 142.5 between Marquette and Villanova? Why? Because the three-point line should be available tonight for both schools.
Donnie, basically the same exact total the first time these two teams met at the end of January in Milwaukee. Marquette won that game 87-74 decisively, covering as a 9.5-point home favorite, but 142 was the closing consensus number. Of course, these two teams got into the 160s, so that went well over. I kind of like the point that you were bringing up there, seeing some pace tonight for Marquette. Maybe a little bit overlooked right now, Donnie, in the Big East because of St. John's and Creighton testing the Johnnies a little bit more. And, of course, UConn's good and bad. Marquette, once again, 11-4 in conference play, had lost 3 in a row to UConn, Creighton, and St. John's, trying to get back into the mix. They will end the year, that being the Golden Eagles, against Connecticut and St. John's in their final 2 games within the Big East. Let's get you ready for a Saturday in college hoops. That's next. Live right here on this Friday morning on the early line on SportsGrid. He is Donnie. I am Ben. As we shared an awesome Friday night in college basketball. Big Ten in the battle for the top spot between 2 very bitter in-state foes, Michigan State and Michigan. That game in Ann Arbor, also in Philadelphia, regional Philadelphia tonight inside the Wells Fargo Center. Villanova hosts Marquette. And Donnie, that's just an appetizer, if you will, for an awesome college basketball weekend. Every weekend in college basketball has been awesome, but with 3 weeks away from Selection Sunday, basically, these games add on some more critical importance. Conference championship races in the regular season, trying to be involved in your conference tournaments, and of course, making sure you can be in the field of 68 for the biggest of all dances. As we look at some of the notable games for Saturday, these odds not really out just yet. They will be later on this Friday afternoon. Tomorrow, top 10 tilt in Houston. Number 5 Houston hosts number 8 Iowa State. The Cougs very close to clinching their second consecutive Big 12 regular season title in each of their first 2 years in the league. Then we go to College Station. Top 10 tilt A&M and Tennessee. Then we go elsewhere in the SEC. Alabama and Kentucky. Top 20 matchup. The Crimson Tide have now dropped 2 in a row. At home on Saturday against Auburn. On the road this week in Columbia against Missouri in a very high-scoring game, 110-98. And how about an odd non-conference game in the heart of conference action? Both Illinois and Duke, DRS, had a long break from some of their conference matchups, so both teams decided, hey, let's iron sharpen iron this weekend. Inside Madison Square Garden, Illinois will take on number 3 Duke. The Dukies probably thinking, hey, the ACC not great. Let's make sure we see some really good competition as we get ready for March. Awesome weekend slate.
No, it certainly is. And by the way, aren't you interested in seeing what the Kentucky-Alabama team totals are going to be for both sides and the total for that game is? Like 3-point shot, absolute bonanza for both of those teams. But as you pointed out, number 17 versus number 4, Alabama really needs a bounce back in this spot, but also a resume builder for Kentucky at the same time. You want to stop the bleeding. You want to get the vibes going, be good before you have that conference tournament that's only coming up in a few weeks just from now. So it is an interesting slate across the board with a lot of teams looking to buy back in or certainly trying to get their season back off the rails or so back on the rails as opposed to what we're seeing with the Alabama Crimson Tide. But also Iowa State, Houston, that's the one we talked about early in the week. Like, hey, is there a chance that Iowa State can actually steal a number 1 line? You got to win a game like that, and beating Houston would be awesome. So it is fun to talk about it the day before where you're still waiting for the lines to actually come out. But it's interesting to see, like, ooh, I wonder where that line will actually be. But again, my focal point, that Kentucky-Alabama game is going to be so much fun to bet. If you're a prop guy, that's the place you want to be.
Yeah, no doubt about it, DRS. No doubt about it. And we can't really have the odds out from FanDuel. But again, if you subscribe to KenPom.com and you understand Kenneth Pomeroy, he puts out his projections. In his projections, his analytics basically very similar to what odds makers will put out for their spreads as well. I'm still convinced that KenPom influences what the odds and the power ratings are going to be. He predicts Alabama to win 94-89. You don't have to agree with the projection. It's just the pregame odds. So the Crimson Tide should be a 3.5 to 5.5 point favorite in a total that, if I do my math correct, 94 plus 89 is 183. Are we going to see a total in the low 180s tomorrow? It would make sense, Donnie. 2 of the fastest tempos in the sport, 2 of the best offenses in the sport. Alabama much better defensively than they probably get credit for, despite giving up 110 the other night against Mizzou. Kentucky not great on the defensive side, despite holding Vandy to only 21 points in a big second half. Something that stands out to me, by the way, based on KenPom projections, he doesn't actually think the Houston-Iowa State game, despite being a top 10 tilt, is going to be all that great. He has the Cougs winning by 9, 72-63 at home tomorrow. So Houston should win what, at least based by a top 10 standard, would be a lopsided affair. You got to wonder if the Cyclones keep this game closer. They have not played their best basketball in the last 2 weeks or so, but a huge game coming off a big home win against a bad Colorado team earlier this week.
Yeah, 2 really good teams matching up. But as they talk about, like, the fan matches, he calls it there. It's like, hey, guys, I don't know if we're going to get too high flying up and down the court. Get ready for 2 teams to beat on each other and play absolutely great defense. The interesting part is, like, hey, you want to take a team total, as we talked about for the Alabama game? How about if it was 93.5? Like, hey, I'll take that under. And it's like, how did I lose that at this point? Same way I was thinking about Missouri in the mid-80s. Like, I'll take that under. And they drop 110 points in their game. But I'll tell you what's interesting. Missouri going to Arkansas. You just saw how well Missouri played against Alabama. Hey, high flying here. You even take a look at KenPom around that 2-point line, which Missouri eking out a victory as he has it going up against Arkansas. So it just shows you the depth. Like, Arkansas is not a great team. Missouri looks like it's one of those more fun teams, can open up on offense, but still in the SEC, it's hard to win on the road, man. And they're showing it there with maybe a 1.5 to 2 point line as we might be looking at.
Absolutely so. And Arkansas has covered in 5 of their last 6, and their only non-cover last weekend, losing by 8 as a 7.5-point road dog against Texas A&M. Keep an eye on Wisconsin and that total tomorrow against Oregon. The Badgers have scored 94-plus points in 2 straight games. Not your father's Wisconsin offense by any means. Not listed on this graphic, DRS, but maybe one of the other great games of Saturday. We head to Spokane. Gonzaga and St. Mary's, 8 p.m. Eastern time. The rivalry within the WCC. Can Gonzaga edge out the Gales and stay alive in the conference championship regular season race?
Yeah, it should be a fun one to try to handicap. And you always that's the one team that those two teams look forward to playing to in their conference each and every year. But let me understand this, though. Kevin brought to my attention the Mississippi Valley State, which if you're looking at the fan match is the worst game on the card, the worst offense in college basketball, the worst defense in college basketball, which is the same team. But understand this, they're playing Texas Southern in conference play. Texas Southern turns you over more than any person in that conference. And also Mississippi Valley State, 25% of the time, let's round up here, they turn the basketball over. If you put it in football terms, the equivalent, we don't know if Mississippi Valley State crosses half court in this game, let alone scores. How about that one? Goodness.
Maybe not a great basketball team, but a great basketball Twitter account. And if that clip goes viral, they're going to make a lot of fun of Donnie Rightside.
Yeah.
St. Mary's, by the way, 2-game advantage over the Zags right now to win.
Yeah.
What a weekend of college basketball that we continue here to round out our 3 hours together on this Friday on the early line on SportsGrid. I'm not exactly sure what happened at the end, but we wish Donnie Rightside the best. Hope he has a great weekend. You can catch him on the money line in just a couple of minutes on SportsGrid Radio. We've done Friday night in college basketball. We've done the full slate on Saturday. Donnie giving you some plays on Mississippi Valley State and Texas Southern. That's how you know we get down here with things in the SWAC. We continue on Sunday. We've got great games every single day. We've got 2 consecutive great days at Madison Square Garden. Duke and Illinois, a rare non-conference game at this stage of the season on Saturday night at the world's most famous arena. I mean, man, how about Sunday afternoon at Madison Square Garden? St. John's looking to solidify its case for a Big East regular season crown for the first time in more than 30 years since Lou Carnesecca, the great Louie, was last head coach up in Queens in 1991-92 against UConn inside MSG. Now, those that love the Huskies call Madison Square Garden Storrs South. Storrs, Connecticut, that's where UConn is located. But that was before Slick Rick took things over for the Red Storm. That was before the hottest ticket in town in Madison Square Garden wasn't Billy Joel. Heck, maybe not even the New York Knicks. It was St. John's men's basketball. What a game we have on Sunday afternoon. Again, direct ramifications for St. John's here in the Big East title race, because as you look at the Big East standings right now, St. John's 14-2, technically a 2.5 game advantage in front of Marquette. The Golden Eagles, a slight favorite on the road tonight in Philly against Villanova. Creighton 11-4, but the season series split between St. John's and Creighton. UConn 10-5. Probably not in the running for another Big East regular season crown like a season ago, but St. John's trying to keep pace with just 4 games remaining for the Red Storm in this Big East regular season. Again, the odds, of course, not out for Sunday afternoon just yet, but Ken Palm predicting an 8-point win for the Red Storm, 75-67. That Johnny's defense, a huge reason why, but a very tough test. And Liam McNeely, the freshman now back for the Huskies, playing some great basketball. And, of course, a great turnaround for UConn earlier this week, coming back from down 14 in the final 12 minutes against Villanova to win in Hartford. How about some rivalries continuing this weekend as well? In the Big Ten, in 49 other states, maybe it's just basketball. In Indiana, it's a way of life. The Hoosiers at home in Assembly Hall hosting Purdue. The Boilermakers uncharacteristic for Matt Painter the last few years, have now dropped 3 consecutive Big Ten games, trying to get back on track against an Indiana team that, of course, has not exactly had the best season. And, of course, at the end of this year, they are going to be looking for a coaching change. Mike Woodson on his way out. But Woody's done a great job against Purdue during his tenure at IU. And I would expect nothing but that inside Assembly Hall. Even when the season seems lost, when you play a rival in this kind of game on a Sunday afternoon, the Hoosiers will step up. Keep an eye on what those odds are going to be. Right now, Ken Palm has Purdue winning by 4, 77-73. 150 about would be that total. UCLA at home against Ohio State. Rutgers, trying to make the most of a disappointing season in Piscataway, will host USC. Has not been an easy go for the Trojans as of late. We talked about Creighton earlier, trying to stay in the Big East title race. Good one in Omaha against Georgetown. Ed Cooley's team has been competitive throughout Big East action, which is more than we've really been able to say the last few years for that team from the nation's capital. Memphis in pole position in the American, 21-5, top 25 in the country, taking on FAU. Not exactly the same Owls team without Dusty May leading things there. And man, as we get ready for Arch Madness here very quickly in the Missouri Valley Conference, you better keep an eye on Ben McCollum and his Bulldogs. Drake 24-3 in a huge one in Missouri Valley competition this weekend. In the MVC, right now Drake in that top spot. In conference, they are 14-3. But who do they play? Northern Iowa, who has won a bunch of games in a row. They are 13-4. They've got an opportunity to make some noise. We hope you had a great week here on the early line. We hope you have an even better weekend. We'll talk to you Monday, 8 a.m. Eastern time here on the Grid.